In my hand I hold a yellow thing. But not just any yellow thing. This particular yellow thing might just be the most interesting yellow thing in all of Yellow Thingdom. I rest my case. Punk rock is freedom. Kurt Cobain, the soul, the sound, the story is the latest work from Double DRJ, decorated Danish rock journalist, and my not at all yellow friend, Henrik Tuxen. I know. You're probably asking yourself, how can a blue man write a yellow book? And what could possibly remain to be said about Kurt Cobain, a topic that has been pondered, pontificated upon, parsed, and turned into parsley innumerable times. Therein lies the beauty of this book, for this topic has not, until now, been turned into parsley by a Double DRJ. You see, Henrik's job entails having long conversations with folks the rest of us would love to get a fleeting high five from. And in many of those chats, Henrik uncovered an intriguing common thread in the topic of Kurt Cobain. This book is about Kurt's influence on music and on the world back then and today, using Henrik's words and words from a lot of people whose names you know. It is a study of the artist and of the cooperating contradictions that lived inside Kurt Cobain that made Kurt Cobain Kurt Cobain. You'll find the link to get your very own yellow thing, of course, in the description, and without any further ado, I humbly present you with my very fun conversation with the author, Henrik Tuxen.
There you are. Now we're good. Okay, we are recording. Henrik, it's wonderful to see you again.
Likewise. I mean, and you in these amazing, beautiful, natural surroundings.
This is my outdoor office. Yes, thank you very much.
Love that.
The rent is really cheap outside.
It is a bit John Cleese, as you said.
All right, Henrik, I have now read 1 3/4 of your books. I have, of course, read Pearl Jam, The More You Need, The Less You Get. And I say 3/4 because this book, Punk Rock is Freedom, Kurt Cobain, The Soul, The Sound, The Story, is very, very different from your Pearl Jam book. And by that, I mean the Pearl Jam book is an incredible story. It's sort of your life in parallel and intersecting with Pearl Jam's journeys. And it was a lot of first person. But this book, on the other hand, I would call this a masterpiece of investigative journalism. I would call the depth. The reason I say 3/4 is because this book is so dense. And your depth of thought is nothing short of intimidating, and you're frozen.
Yeah, and you've been frozen for a while, but I heard you all the time.
Okay, hold on. No, we got to try this again.
Okay.
We got to get this.
But I like your intro there.
And I cannot turn 2 pages without needing to go spend a half hour on Google.
That's good. That's that. I hope it could be like, if it can inspire people, that's great.
And I pose that intro sort of to ask the question, given your standing as a decorated rock journalist, your job is basically to spend lots of time with the folks that we all wish we could spend time with. I'm sure you could have found an easier way to make some money.
I think so.
Why did you feel that you needed to write this book?
I think because I felt that I could, and because it was really great being so well received for writing about Pearl Jam and getting that released in like 3 languages, which was amazing. But on the other hand, I also felt like I got a little tag or label like, okay, he's the Pearl Jam guy, and I was like, well, I am, but that maybe be like 5% of my work for the last 25 years. I like to show you something else, and I thought I had, and then I had a good experience writing a long book, and I thought I kind of got a grab of a bigger perspective, a stronger line of thought, maybe.
It's awesome. I love it. I'm gonna move on. It was great.
Cool.
I said I can't turn 2 pages without reaching for the Google machine, and a big, humongous part of that, and I'm exposing myself as maybe not as well versed in music history as maybe the folks think I am. But your incredibly exhaustive history of punk leading up to Nirvana was, I couldn't get through a paragraph without adding 2 or 3 bands to my golf playlist for my digestion. Why did you feel like it was so important to have such a background and such a lead? I'll even go so far as to say, before, and this might answer the question, but I'd like you to talk about it. Before reading that section of this book, a whole bunch of Nirvana songs made no sense to me. And having now understood the background of punk and so forth, suddenly Nirvana, I get it now. They were making a whole ton of noise.
That's an achievement. That's an achievement for me, Ryan.
So thank you, and could you please talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think, I kind of ended up writing the bio on Kurt Cobain. My plan was actually to write a bio on Chris Cornell and I had some old stuff and I would just kind of want to try, see if I could figure the English, how that worked as far as writing. And then all of a sudden, I got going. And then I guess I thought that is really Kurt Cobain's life and is very well documented. So if I should do something, add something to that with story, that would be to put it in some kind of perspective. And I thought that it really made like music history, like especially punk rock, but just a lot of other things, made a lot of sense and sort of shaping Kurt Cobain and his thing. And on the other hand, also all the stuff like kind of he and others started out, which really speaks to like current issues as a perfectionist culture and all that. And then I kind of used my background was pretty much just 13 years on the road with a band playing a lot of the same clubs as he did, with 2 guys from Seattle, and 25 years of music journalism. So that was sort of what I could sort of bring to the table, I thought.
Yeah, that was a huge, immensely. I mean, I was embarrassed for myself as I was reading that kind of opening whole situation there. So just a follow-up question there. I know it takes a lot of energy to do something like this, and you just recently finished. And I don't expect you to put a time frame on it, but do you ever hope or think you might write that Chris Cornell book that you were thinking of writing?
I don't know. Maybe there was some very interesting and good people, which we kind of know, both of us, who said they would contribute to that. But for my writing, but I kind of dropped the idea when I thought there was all this fighting happened, and I don't even want to get into that. And
I understand.
I don't want to do it if it's unwanted and there's a lot of obstacles. But yeah. I interviewed Chris like 5 times and very close to his death and all the way back in '99. So I got like a good section there.
Yeah. Maybe not the friendliest waters there. I completely understand.
I don't know how it is like now, but that's I kind of it seemed like don't even get into that.
I understand. Okay, one thing I never, ever, ever pondered before reading your book is that Kurt Cobain was sort of an early voice in gender equality and saying, eschewing the lavish, over the top lifestyle. And one thing I really enjoyed was that you backed that claim up with some Nirvana lyrics. So could you talk about some of those Nirvana lyrics and sort of expand on that point that Kurt was, in the beginning there of true equality, which is still obviously still going on today and isn't even nearly done, but that he stood for that?
I think that's the lyrics and the way they're expressed and talked, it's really earns to the legacy, and also why it keeps on being really important for people. And like he always said, like, it's piece of poetry thrown together, randomly, and everybody said lie, who knew him, or like everything from him coming to the pajamas or wrapping up whatever. It was deliberately random or whatever. There was certainly an idea behind that, and I think like the lyric speaks truly from the gut, and it's really, some of it is violent, ugly, and even painful to witness, and he's slaughtering most people, most of all himself. But I mean, for it, I think like the more I read, the more I get into it, he was really, really strong on rejecting the sexist machoism in music, and like his biggest enemy turned out probably to be Axl Rose. And Axl Rose in the beginning was like embracing him, and you had that, I can't even remember what video it is, but he's wearing a Nirvana hat or shirt, Axl, which you probably hate this day. But for instance, like Smells Like Teen Spirit, that's actually writing that comes directly from you can say a feminist activism day, where they spray painted. There was these fake abortion clinics, and him and Kathleen Hanna, I think it was, they spray painted fake abortion clinic so young girls shouldn't come up and be cheated. And then they got drunk and went home, and after a while he wrote like this, Kurt Smells Like Teen Spirit on his wall with the same spray, right? And he didn't know Teen Spirit was a deodorant, and so he called it. But anyway, so that his most famous song, their most favorite song, that come directly from an activist and gender equality, and and I think that's part of it, why he still speaks so strongly to people and makes so much sense.
Yeah, and even to that point, you said that perhaps Nirvana's more popular now and more current now than they were back then.
I think that's interesting. That's also a point, because I think like when there's so much romanticism in sort of the legacy, or you talk about, so whatever you see every day on television. I saw this Patrick Swayze here yesterday. It's probably true, some of it, but it's like, he was such a great guy. Everybody was so amazing, and like, that's interesting. I remember when he was that person was alive, you were like, hating each other's guts, as far as I know. And actually, I did also a bit of that sort of compare. There was this rivalry, was on Kurt's side, but Pearl Jam versus Nirvana, and I think it would be fair to say, at least here, that the name, the face that stands the strongest would be Kurt Cobain's. But if you look at the end of Nirvana, it was actually a commercial decline, which was pretty big. I mean, like Versus were outselling in Utero like 6 times or something, and they came 6 weeks from each other, and I thought that was interesting to add all those things. Also because I don't like I think Nirvana and Kurt Cobain was super powerful, strong music, and it just like changed my life almost when I heard it first. But also dislike that sort of, Club 27 or the suffering artist, and sort of getting into that indulgence of how, you better suffer or you can't, to be too good for this world, and also like how big it was. When you look at the backs, in Utero, it was certainly not a commercial. It sold a lot of records now, and it's a great record. It's not that. But if you count the last Nirvana show, that was a 3,000 seater in Munich, and in the Utero tour, it was also quoted for Chris Novoselic saying, "Everything is big in Texas except Nirvana." So, but I think that's just interesting, those perspectives, and just sort of open that. I hope that the book probably have a lot of openings, a lot of doors, a lot of things, because that's probably the way I am, or I'm thinking or reflecting of stuff. If not, I've been bored of music journalism like 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, I wasn't aware that that their shows had gone down too. But and this is not to be included. This is just me musing now, probably, or maybe that'll make it great, so it'll be included. There's a certain amount of hype, right? Perfect word, because of the documentary, right? There's a certain amount.
Certainly, yeah, great film, by the way.
Yeah, and then like Pearl Jam, for instance, rode the hype, kept making great records that some of us love, you know what I mean? And so they've done basically this ever since, right?
Yeah.
But Nirvana kind of went like that, and then nothing for a little, and then something about their message like did that post.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's all. That's just neat.
But I think also it's worth mentioning, or like, to the legacy and to the sort of realness of that there are some, there is an honesty, or there's a directness, or there's something in Kurt Cobain's expression which sort of transcends through times. And I see that for like young girls in Denmark now, for instance, or like, like, if they hear that and if they feel like that, other people, it just goes right through you, and you get it. And I think so in that way, that music certainly stood the test of time. I mean, I even, like, in my book, I'll compare it to my own taste for like Van Gogh and Billie Holiday, people who were dead way before I was born. But when I hear it, I feel the agony, I feel the pain, and it speaks to me. And I think Kurt Cobain has that quality, or Nirvana had that quality.
Yeah, the other way of thinking about, I just thought of that. The other way of thinking about that is if you go into a thrift store, a secondhand store, and there's LPs, record albums from the 40s and 50s or whatever, and you flip through them, and zero of the people. You're not aware of any of them. But at the time, they were popular enough to have a record made.
Yeah.
Which of the bands now? And I think the answer is pretty obvious, but there's always some surprises. How many of the bands now, in 50 years, their records will be at the thrift store and nobody cares?
Yeah. You don't know. I mean, and sometimes you get surprised.
Yeah, you get But, yeah.
I mean, I even have that. I saw some 80s Danish pop. Yeah, and I remember when it happened, I thought like, that's so lame. And now it's like, I had to say, well, it's classics, and it's classics like we have our, like what we sing in church or something. That's what it's become here. And I didn't see that back then. I just thought it was, I was not into pop. I was like,
yeah,
it's got to be loud and noisy.
Yeah. That is something else. Speaking of Kurt Cobain's rejection of commercialism and machoism, and so forth, and even to the extent that I don't know where I read it one time, but I did read it or hear it somewhere or something, but that he had a stomach condition and he needed to take pills, and his pills were $200, and he was upset about the $200 the year he made $2 million or something. So clearly, money wasn't his motivation. It wasn't commercialism. It wasn't being on top or something. What motivated, in 5 words or less, just kidding. What motivated Kurt Cobain? Because in as much as we can say, oh, boo-hoo, I'm a rock star, everything has its challenges. And you could argue that when you're way up here, it's harder in ways because you have farther to fall.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, motivated, I'd say everything about Kurt Cobain is a contradiction. Everything you'd say one thing, he rejected fame. On the other hand, you can see like he was like craving for it, and it's documented, and he called up managers and why they're not playing us on MTV, and I think everything is false, everything is true, and he was, the sweetest guy, the loving husband, the beautiful guy, and you see him with with his friends or with his little daughter at the ending. On the other hand, he would like be so vicious and I just think everything, and very important for me, or what I'd say is like what I am certainly not in any way claiming in this book is that this is the truth.
Right.
This is just like observations, contradictions, and I think even though he was a hero, he was an anti-hero, he was an asshole, he was a saint, or what he and I think all of it is true. As far as his motivation, I think it's fair to say that he was gifted and he had a unique talent, like you would say, what you take footballer Maradona who just died, or everybody's just and he was hurting and he was suffering, but he also had a will, and he had the creative skills on a number of levels, and I think if you have that, it's just that's how you breathe, that's how you express yourself. So I think that was natural in that way, and I think interesting actually looking at it, how chaotic everything was. And he didn't drink that much actually, but the drugging and chaotic living, and you have all this, but they were really hardworking when they played. Also, when Dave Grohl came to Nirvana, to Olympia at that time, it was like, well, they kind of rehearsed like 5 hours a day sometimes, and on and on, and also in the short lifetime they did so many interviews, so they were like, there was also there was an urge to just get it out, do it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that was a great answer. I loved that answer. That was awesome. That was great.
I think the contradiction, that's the good thing about it. I think that's, you should read it with that in mind. And it's not, and I'm certainly not, I mean, of course I'm a fan. If I wasn't a fan, I wouldn't have bothered to spend so much time writing about it and getting information and stuff. But it's certainly not like an ode to a hero, or like he's my whatever. I think it's really the contradictions, and I think what human being would not honestly say that you have so many contradictions, and on one hand you're like that, and one hand, but I think within Kurt you can see everything, but you can see it at it's so transparent, but it's so accessible because it's so high quality.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about your book here, Punk Rock is Freedom, Kurt Cobain, the Soul, the Sound, the Story, is that you present those two things. You're like, okay, this happened, and this happened. Here's what I think about it. I'm not saying what I think about it is correct, but here's something for you to chew on.
Yeah, and I think like the more I got that's true, and I think like probably half the book is the biography, and half the book is my own experiences or interviews with other people, or reflections later on, and thoughts of 25 years has passed. Can I say what do I think now? What do people? We have some knowledge now which we didn't have then, and I think just that whole thing, and I think also the fact that not only, I mean, this is of course only a bit of my interviews I've done, but there's some pretty heavy people within that genre, from even going back to the 60s, like Led Zeppelin people, and I thought there was just something like quite substantial to get that into format. And then of course also is my own life, because I played those clubs, I've been in those bands, I recorded in Seattle, I interviewed all these people, I played here and there. So, and I think that's probably everything you spend a lot of time on. It's not a bit about if there's not a bit about yourself and not a bit of self-reflection, you know, you probably lose interest. I think I would.
No, that's and the genuineness, is that a word, comes through that thread. That's a perfect segue into the question: at what point in your journeys as a decorated Danish rock journalist, whose job it is to spend a whole bunch of time with people, you know, the most of us wish we could spend even a moment in all of those journeys, can at what point did sort of the bulb go off that you had a book? You know, do you remember the spot where you were, or did it kind of grow slowly? How did it develop that you realized, yeah?
I think I was very pleased with the reception of the Pearl Jam book, and also that it all of a sudden got popular in South America, and that was like, wow, that's great. Not, I mean, you don't get rich. I trust you that. But you get that such a huge network and such a positive. Yeah, like that's how we met, right? And then I just knew that I had more stuff in me, and I thought that I liked the sort of the process of the Pearl Jam writing, and I guess, if I was a band. And you can say like, okay, I was in the studio doing the Pearl Jam book, and then now I'm on tour. That was out like having talks and being in South America, and then like, okay, maybe it's time to go. Do you have some more creative ideas? Maybe it's time to go back in the studio. A little bit like that. And then I thought, I knew I had so much that if I could crack it to write in English directly, that would ease do things more easy, or just also interesting to see if I could. And I had some people who believed it was good, so I kind of just started out, and like I said, I had this Chris Cornell idea, and I wrote a piece in my kitchen. I still have that. I was like, wow, this is pretty good, you know. This can work. And then I just kind of got going with the Kurt Cobain, because I'd written an old piece which had been popular, and I took a look at it in Danish, and then I look at it, it was like, wow, there's so many loose ends. It's not as good as all as I thought. But then I started translating it, and then I realized how much I haven't even realized how much is written about Kurt Cobain. I don't even want to know. I just knew that. Fuck, that's a lot, you know. So I was like, can I add anything original to this at all, or is this just like a waste of time, or just me practicing my English? And then I guess what really happened was that I think like a turning point was that I ended up doing a radio series program in Denmark for like 10-hour radio, like 5 times 2 hours. And it was exclusively based on all interviews I did. It was called the cassette tapes, because it was all tapes I had on cassette, which I almost threw out. And yeah, but that was like, you know, all kinds of major artists. It was like Jimmy Page, Steven Tyler, Iggy Pop, Ron Wood, John Frusciante, Chris Cornell, Pearl Jam, and all people like that. Lenny Kravitz, U2. I can't even remember. Radiohead, lots and lots of Radiohead. And then when we did that, you know, serious, then I was like, okay, maybe I should prepare. Maybe I should actually read my own interviews where I have, or listen to those tapes, and that really sort of made the book. Because they made, I was surely I could say like my passive knowledge became active. Because did you interview Billy Corgan in Chicago 1998 with Darcy and James Ear? Yes, I did. Do you remember what you talked about? No, not really, but I remember bits and pieces. But then when I got into it and read a bit, then oh yeah, he said that, and that was at that time. Okay, that happened. And okay, the lyrics were like this, and all of a sudden it was like, all these things became active, and it was so great that I mean, I didn't have, I don't really have interviews with like the big hardcore punk artists like Jello Biafra or some people like that from America. But besides that, I was really well covered, you know, from Iggy Pop to Sex Pistols to, you know, for all big grunge bands and things. Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, obviously lots of Pearl Jam and many other things. Obviously, like Tom Morello saying some amazing stuff, and Pete Townsend of The Who, all these people. Flea saying some goddamn incredible stuff, you know, real passionate. But I think that was really, all of a sudden, that changed the whole pattern in a way, because I could see I could just see all these threads, right? And it also dawned on my own history as a musician, so I think that all of a sudden I got so into it because it was only becoming about my own life as well. So that really inspired me, and doors kept on opening, and there's probably a lot more there. And I also thought what I liked about writing the Pearl Jam, and which I sometimes do in articles, is like I'd kind of take that. I write about the band, but it would be my you know, my interaction of what I've experienced, because that's what I can offer, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way of. I would say that's a way of working that works for me. And at that point, doing those radio programs, that's when this book really sort of took a different, a more, I would say, much more personal direction. And at the moment now, when I look at it, it feels much more satisfying and much more about, you know, that's my life, you know, at least a big part of it.
Yeah, you're the only person who can inject that into something, right?
Yeah, and I think that goes for everybody. You know, it's not like my story is better or more interesting or whatever than other people, but what I have there, that's mine, and it's first-hand sources, and it's my way of looking at it, and that's what I like to see. You know, I don't need anybody to tell me the truth, but I would love to hear what they've experienced or what they thought. You know.
Yeah.
And I hope that goes vice versa.
Yeah, no, yes, absolutely. That is a perfect segue into my last question here, which is a very serious question. Now you were.
I'm sure.
You're going back into your life and being in a band with two guys from Seattle called the Sharing Petrol.
That's true.
And I enjoy the Sharing Petrol's music very much. In fact, I listened to recently. I couldn't tell you the name of the song. I apologize, but it had the longest jam in the middle of it. So maybe that jogs your memory. And
that sounds like us.
Yeah, it was not only long, it was very choreographed. Like there were many points where you had to have practiced together to record.
Oh yeah.
To record this, and I was very impressed by that. Which has nothing to do with what I'm about to ask, but you were in the band Sharing Petrol. And when you traveled, you know, from venue to venue with your band, the Sharing Petrol, did you ever come across someone who had broken down by the side of the road, and then the Sharing Petrol would have had to be sharing petrol?
I think actually it's not directly saying yes, but I remember a thing where we were playing as far as back when it was called we played when at the time of the Berlin Wall, you know. And I remember we played a lot in Berlin, which was Western Berlin, and all our crew and stuff, that was like people from all the squatted houses and the squatter movement. And one time I remember, like we had the gas tank was like in front in the seat, and it was running out, you know, or there was no cooling or anything, and we got it because we didn't want to get stuck in DDR, German with that place, we wanted to get to West Berlin, and I remember we kept on driving, and I was a co-driver, and I was like pouring these gallons of water while we were driving, directly into the tank, so that we were kind of sharing a bit petrol there.
Sharing petrol. Well, Henrik, this has been a really good time. Thank you so much for joining me for this discussion about your book, Punk Rock is Freedom, Kurt Cobain, the Soul, the Sound, the Story.
That's great. Thanks.